Okay, today's show is about getting to the bottom of it all, what happened in Minnesota. I've got the country's top self defense criminal law attorney who's going to dissect and analyze exactly what happened in Minnesota with that tragedy with Andrew Pretti, who brought a firearm and two, not one, but two extra magazines to protest peacefully, according to Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, who released egregious statements yesterday. We're going to finally get to the bottom of this. Also, we have a message from Trump, who has announced what he's going to do about Minnesota. He says he also met with Governor Tampon Tim Walz, as well as we've got brand new footage, a whole new angle that we can look at and dissect. I've slow-moed the entire thing. Today, you could call this show The Truth Show. We're going to get to the bottom of it all. Oh, and by the way, please stick around because we have another organization that we have to boycott, and this one is a biggie. But first, here is stabilized video from the Alex Pretti incident that appears to show even after CBP disarmed him, he does reach toward his holster area and draws what looks like a secondary magazine he was carrying. Check this out. So right there, you can see that he reaches for his holster and pulls something out. Now imagine, put yourself in the minds of law enforcement officers who have faced multiple attacks, assaults, vilified, demonized by the media, by these Minnesota mook, traitorous, treasonous, vermin politicians. What would you be thinking if you saw this? So I reached out to Andrew Branca if he could share with us what his thoughts are. He is the country's top expert, self-defense law, and he weighs in. Check this out.
SIG 320 AXG Combat. You can see it has a threaded barrel, just like the suspect's gun. This image is from the SIG website, so it doesn't have the optional optic on it, which this guy has, which, by the way, is a SIG optic, a Romeo 2 optic, 9mm pistol, high capacity. This magazine might be the 20 or 21 round magazine, the way it's extending from the gun. This is not an inexpensive firearm. This gun, just the gun without the optics, sells for anywhere between $1,000 and $1,200 retail. And the optic that's on the shooter's gun is typically another $500 or $600. So we're pushing a couple $1,000s worth of the pistol here, which is not a small amount of money on the gun. Now, I'm going to mention, because someone's going to mention it, like it or not, SIG 320s have developed a reputation, deserved or not, of unintentional discharges, meaning if they're dropped, sometimes they go off when they're not supposed to. They're supposed to be drop safe, but there's been lots of press coverage and lawsuits about people like just putting a primer in the gun and dropping it, the primer goes off. That's not supposed to happen. There's been lots of lawsuits where people say, I bumped the gun in the holster and it just went off and shot me in the leg, that kind of stuff. In this case, it's beginning to look, at least initially, as if one of the ICE guys perceived the gun on the suspect, this gun, and took it off his person and was turning away, walking away with the gun to secure it from the suspect. But what might have happened, remember, there's a whole bunch of officers involved. They're not all Ethernet cable to each other's brains. They're all seeing different things. And one officer might have seen the gun and said the word gun. And that might have triggered that first shot by an officer. And then all the other officers begin shooting in response to that initial discharge. That does not make the shooting unlawful. It would be an awful, but lawful shooting. So what's required for the shooting to be lawful? The officers have to have a reasonable perception of an imminent threat of unlawful deadly force harm. That's it. If the answer to that is yes, this is a lawful shoot. They're struggling with this gun. If they perceive this guy as being non-compliant with arrest, fighting with officers, as reaching for a weapon, they will have reasonably perceived an imminent threat of unlawful deadly force harm, justifying their use of deadly defensive force. And their perception does not have to be correct. Their perception has to be reasonable. We're not required to make perfect decisions in self-defense. Police, too. We're required to make reasonable decisions in self-defense. If an officer heard a fellow officer shout gun, and officers are allowed to rely on the expertise of training on their fellow officers, they don't personally need to see the threat themselves. If another officer with whom they're working in that event shouts out that the triggering event has been observed by a fellow officer, that's enough for another officer to resort to the use of deadly defensive force. They're allowed to rely on their reasonable perceptions of the other officer's communications and conduct. Happens all the time because everyone knows the officers have different perspectives or seeing different things at any given time. Every officer does not personally need to see the threat. He has to have a reasonable belief that the threat is present. That can be based on a reliance of what other officers communicate to him. So if one officer shouts gun, all the other officers are going to be prepared to, and some of them will shoot, as appears to be what happened here. When you get in a physical brawl with a bunch of armed law enforcement officers and you have a gun on your person, you're running a serious risk of getting fatally shot in the course of that confrontation. The moment they see that gun, they've reasonably perceived an imminent threat of deadly, unlawful force against them, and they'll justifiably respond with deadly defensive force. By the way, it's not uncommon for police officers to shoot other police officers. Like two plainclothes police officers respond to a scene of violence, see each other with guns in hand, and one shoots the other. And it's a justified shooting because the shooter, although he wasn't actually shooting a criminal and that other person was a fellow police officer unknown to him, was not actually a deadly force threat to him. He was reasonably perceived, given the circumstances, as an imminent, unlawful threat of deadly force harm, and therefore it was justified to use deadly defensive force.
I don't know about you guys, but that's, I've learned more from Andrew Branca about self-defense and criminality and proper protocol and procedures in law enforcement than I have in any kind of training course or classes or anything that I would have gotten anywhere else. He goes on to say this about, well, what if the first shot was accidental? Does that still mean that it was justified or not? Check out his response here.
But what if this dude, Mr. Gray Jacket, had an accidental discharge with the .320? That was the initial gunshot. And that led the other officers to say, holy crap, shots are going off. Time to shoot this guy. I now reasonably perceive him as a imminent, unlawful, deadly force threat. I can use deadly defensive force. Are they right that Alex Pretti, assuming this scenario, right, where this is the initial gunshot, were the shooting officers correct in perceiving Alex Pretti as an imminent, unlawful, deadly force threat in that circumstance? Probably not, unless there's independent evidence of an imminent, unlawful, deadly force threat from Alex Pretti. But under this scenario where this is an AD, maybe those officers were mistaken that Alex Pretti was presenting as an imminent, unlawful, deadly force threat. Does that make the shooting of Alex Pretti unlawful? The answer is no. No, because the officers do not need to be correct in their perception of an imminent, unlawful, deadly force threat from Alex Pretti. Use of force law, the law of self-defense, does not require you to be correct. It doesn't require perfect decision-making. It only requires reasonable decision-making, which doesn't mean optimal decision-making. It doesn't mean best-case decision-making. Reasonable decision-making simply means that you're making decisions by applying your powers of reason to the facts before you. It's a reasoned decision. That's what makes it a reasonable decision. You're always operating on imperfect information. No one knows the truth in any absolute sense, especially a chaotic, multi-officer grapple with a violent, felonious suspect, non-compliant with lawful arrest. Everybody only has partial information. Part of that information is going to be we're fighting a non-compliant, violent, felonious suspect, and a gun just went off. That's part of that information. Now, they may misinterpret the source of that gunshot. They may think he's shooting at us, and it's not him, it's the guy in the gray jacket. Does that matter for the reasonableness of their perception? No, it doesn't. It could have been a car backfiring that sounds like a gunshot, And it would be reasonable to perceive that noise in the circumstances as a gunshot. So for legal purposes, in terms of the criminal liability of the officers who fired the shot, it doesn't really matter where the shot came from. It doesn't matter if this guy the gray jacket had a accidental discharge. I would suggest if the guy in the gray jacket wanted intentionally to fire a round right there to induce sympathetic firing by the other officers in order to maliciously get Alex Pretti killed, he might have liability. I could characterize that as a manslaughter, but the officers who fired the shot would not have legal liability because they still would have been making a reasonably perceived decision based on the totality of the circumstances known to them that Alex Pretti was presenting as an unlawful, imminent, deadly force threat. So all this stuff, even if this guy did fire, it does not matter. It does not matter for purposes of the legal liability of the officers who actually fired.
That is extremely informative right there. And, it's just sad that we live in a day and age where our law enforcement officers, this is on top of not only being, as Andrew stated correctly, a chaotic situation where you've got literally people interfering with your job in violent, abrasive ways, but the fact that you have been subject to an onslaught, a cavalcade of demeaning, defaming, derisive, that's a good alliteration for you right there, accounts in the media, negative, defamatory, inflammatory, remarks from leaders. You have been attacked by actual peaceful protesters. What a joke that is. But this is what we mean by knowledge is power. And that, I think, just elucidates it perfectly. They don't even have to be necessarily perceptively correct. And the bottom line is this: protest all you want. There's nothing wrong with protesting. But bringing a firearm with 2 magazines and then violently injecting yourself and interfering with law enforcement carrying out their duty, simply doing their job. Choices have consequences and actions come at a cost. It's a tragic thing that happened, but I don't know about you, but I stand with ICE. This is what I voted for. This is what Trump ran on. Promises made, promises kept. How about you? Are you still down with ICE and President Trump? Let me know in the comments down below. Speaking of Trump, perfect segue. He posted this regarding Minnesota and Tampon Tim. Check this out. Stating, Governor Tim Walz called me with the request to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz that I would have Tom Homan call him, and that what we are looking for are any and all criminals that they have in their possession. The governor very respectfully understood that, and I will be speaking to him in the near future. He was happy, Trump says, that Tom Homan was going to Minnesota, and so am I. We've had such tremendous success in Washington, D.C., Memphis, Tennessee, and New Orleans, Louisiana, and virtually every other place that we have touched. And even in Minnesota, crime is way down. But both Governor Walz and I want to make it better. President Donald J. Trump. Well, that's really different from the tone that we were hearing, for God knows how long, weeks and months, from both sides, really, but mostly from Fried Brain Frey and Mentally Ilhan and Tampon Tim. So this is really interesting. We know that Trump has the most exemplary negotiation skills, maybe of all time. We know that he knows how to talk to people and deal with people every single day at all levels. I wonder, though, because, all of this hoopla, all this chaos began as soon as the billions, we have no idea how many billions, it could be hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud was exposed in Minnesota. And isn't it interesting how ICE is operating in all 50 states? All 50 states! But where's the chaos and bedlam? Where's the violence? Where's the attacking? Where's the burning buildings and attacking hotels happening? Where is everything happening? In Minnesota. Are the two connected? Are they focusing on vilifying ICE in order to deflect from the billions of dollars of fraud? I don't know. Did this tone have something to do with maybe perhaps some kind of a deal Trump made with Tampon Tim about this fraud? Or maybe is Tampon Tim caving, kissing the ring because he is scared to death about federal prosecution? Remember, he dropped out of the governor's race with no explanation whatsoever as soon as Nick Shirley's expose came out. I think that's more than just a coincidence. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. And lastly, I am so sick and tired in 2026 of athletes and celebrities and their woke BS. Didn't we all vote against this? Isn't this a direct slap in the face to American citizens and the majority of us who voted against this? And the majority of us are sick and tired of DEI woke ideologies? Well, the NBA and the WNBA refuse to just play basketball and enjoy their entitled multi-million-dollar lives, profiting off of all of us for simply dribbling a basketball. Check out this latest statement from the NBA Players Association following the news of yet another fatal shooting in Minneapolis, a city that has been on the forefront of the fight against injustices. What injustices? What fight? They're fighting against law enforcement, you dummies. NBA players can no longer remain silent. Now more than ever, we must defend the right to freedom of speech and stand in solidarity with the people in Minnesota protesting and risking their lives to demand justice. This is almost as bad, almost as garbage, almost as Obama's statement when the video I did yesterday. The fraternity of NBA players, like the United States of Self, is a community enriched by its global citizens. No, it's not. It's enriched by hardworking Americans. Yes, a lot of them are immigrants, but these are immigrants from generational immigrants who came through the right ports of entry. Oh, this gets me so mad. And we refuse to let the flames of division threaten the civil liberties that are meant to protect us all. The MBPA and its members extend our deepest condolences to the families of Alex Pretti and Renee Good, just as our thoughts remain focused on the safety and well-being of all members of our community. They actually did a moment of silence. They postponed, check this out. God, this makes me sick to my stomach. So they postponed a game. They never did this over Laken Riley. They never took a moment of silence for Jocelyn Nungare or Rachel Marin, Patty Marin's daughter, or the thousands upon thousands of American citizens. They never took a knee for Laken Riley. They never take a knee for American citizens, but they fight for criminals. Why don't you guys just shut up and dribble? And then look at this. I don't even know who this is, but she's a WNBA player with an Abolish ICE at one of the most recent games. I don't even know who the hell this is. It's not Caitlin Clark. I think Caitlin Clark might be America first, but I know 90% of them aren't. I'm never going to watch another NBA game as long as I live. I'm never going to purchase another NBA thing as long. Whatever happened to just athletes and celebrities just shutting the F up and thanking your lucky stars that you have the most privileged, luckiest, most fortunate lives ever. You get paid exorbitant amount of dollars for literally doing nothing. You're playing a game, a child's game. While there are millions, hundreds of millions of Americans who work their asses off every day, creating clean places for us to sit in the park, creating administrations that help us to get, our driver's license, help us to get our kids enrolled in healthcare. Everyday Americans who are actually doing the real work, the engines, the salt of the earth, making sure our roads are clean, making sure everything is taken care of. You have the luckiest life ever. And this is how you repay us? By siding with criminals? By siding with the 1% on an 80, 90, 10 issue? Are you joking me right now? You ungrateful mooks? Shut up and dribble. Shut up and dribble and thank your lucky stars. I'm sorry. It just gets me so absolutely crazy. These lucky, privileged. Oh, let me know what you think in the comments down below. I can't wait to hear from you. Please tap the thumbs up. Make this video go viral. Share it with everybody. Watch all the way to the end. I can't wait to to hear from you. Check out these videos coming up on the screen right here, just in case you missed them. Tap this one to go watch next. Tap my face right here to subscribe and follow. It doesn't cost you a thing. And as always, may God bless you, and may God bless the USA and all who defend her. I'll see you soon.